Welcome to the WorldWire Update. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. The Supreme Court has delivered a landmark decision, one that will be studied in law schools and debated in political circles for years to come. In a move that has captured national attention, the court has reined in presidential authority over tariffs imposed during the Trump administration, sending a clear message about the limits of executive power. The ruling clarifies that the power to tax and regulate commerce lies with Congress, not the president acting alone. This fundamental principle, rooted in the Constitution, ensures that no single branch can dominate economic policy. By setting this precedent, the court signals that future presidents must work closely with Congress on major economic policies, fostering greater collaboration and accountability in government. The case was brought by American companies who argued that the tariffs had caused them significant harm, disrupting supply chains and threatening jobs. They contended that the president had overstepped constitutional bounds by acting without congressional approval. After careful consideration, the justices agreed, finding that the executive branch had stretched its delegated authority too far and encroached on powers reserved for the legislative branch. This ruling reaffirms the separation of powers at the heart of American democracy, ensuring that the president cannot bypass Congress when making core economic decisions that affect millions of Americans. Its impact will reshape how Washington approaches trade, executive authority, and the balance of power for years to come, reminding all branches of government of their constitutional responsibilities. The Trump administration's sweeping tariffs, justified by national security and unfair trade claims, sparked immediate backlash. American businesses face soaring costs, passing price hikes to consumers and triggering a legal challenge. The core argument: only Congress can impose taxes like tariffs, not the president acting unilaterally. Lower courts sided with this view, setting up a Supreme Court showdown. The case became a test of whether Congress had surrendered too much power through vague laws. Challengers warned unchecked executive authority could spill into other economic areas. The Supreme Court's decision to hear the case underscored its constitutional significance. The outcome would define the limits of presidential power over trade. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to set tariffs and regulate commerce. While presidents manage foreign affairs, Congress holds the nation's purse strings. Over time, Congress delegated some trade authority to the executive, but always with limits. The legal question: how much power can Congress delegate without abandoning its constitutional duty? The Supreme Court examined whether Trump's tariffs fit within these limits or crossed the line. Challengers argued the president used emergency laws for broad, long-term trade policy, something Congress never approved. The court sided with a strict reading: only Congress can make sweeping changes to trade policy. This decision restores the original constitutional balance. It reasserts Congress's primary role in setting America's trade rules. The Supreme Court took a close look at the legal foundations the Trump administration used to justify its sweeping tariffs, focusing on statutes like the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, and the Trade Act of 1974. These laws were originally designed to give the president certain powers in times of crisis, or to address specific trade issues, but their scope and intent have often been debated. The administration argued that these statutes granted the president broad, almost unchecked authority to act on matters of trade and national security, especially when facing perceived threats from foreign competitors. However, the Supreme Court disagreed with this expansive interpretation. The justices emphasized that Congress cannot simply hand over its core legislative powers to the executive branch without providing clear and specific instructions in the law. The court found that the tariffs represented a dramatic shift in national policy, affecting a wide range of industries and international relationships rather than a targeted response to a specific emergency. According to the court, such sweeping changes to trade policy require direct and explicit approval from Congress, not just a general grant of authority. In its decision, the court invoked the non-delegation doctrine, a constitutional principle that warns Congress against relinquishing its essential lawmaking responsibilities to the executive branch. The ruling made it clear that presidents cannot rely on vague or broadly worded statutes to justify major new policies that reshape the nation's economic landscape. Instead, Congress must set clear boundaries, define the scope of executive action, and retain ultimate control over significant policy decisions that impact the country as a whole. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's ruling draws a firm and unmistakable line on the limits of executive power, reinforcing the fundamental principle of separation of powers at the heart of American democracy. Striking down the tariffs brings immediate relief to American businesses and consumers. This decision is a significant shift in trade policy, aiming to reduce the financial burden on both ends of the economic spectrum. Companies relying on imports will see costs drop, boosting investment and competitiveness. Lower import costs mean businesses can allocate more resources to innovation and expansion, potentially leading to job creation and economic growth. Shoppers should benefit from lower prices on everyday goods as tariffs disappear. This reduction in prices can increase consumer spending power, allowing families to save more or spend on other necessities and luxuries. The decision acts like a tax cut for families, easing the cost of living. With more disposable income, families can better manage their budgets, invest in education, or even plan for vacations. However, industries once protected by tariffs, like steel and aluminum, may face renewed competition. These sectors will need to innovate and improve efficiency to stay competitive in a global market. The ruling highlights the trade-offs in economic policy, gains for most, challenges for some. While the overall economy may benefit, certain industries will need to adapt to the new landscape. Businesses now have more certainty, with clear rules limiting sudden tariff changes. This stability allows for better long-term planning and investment decisions. The decision restores predictability, encouraging long-term growth. Companies can now strategize with confidence, knowing that the trade environment will remain stable. It also ensures major trade decisions require public debate and legislative approval. This transparency fosters a more democratic process in shaping trade policies. The Supreme Court's move stabilizes the trade landscape for the future. By setting a precedent, it ensures that future trade policies will be carefully considered and debated, promoting a balanced approach to economic growth. This ruling reshapes presidential power, setting a precedent that future presidents cannot impose sweeping tariffs without Congress. The decision pushes back against decades of expanding executive authority in economic and foreign policy. Presidents must now seek explicit legislative approval for major trade actions. The ruling strengthens checks and balances, restoring Congress's role in economic decisions. It could influence future legal battles over executive action in other areas, from immigration to environmental policy. The court signals it will more closely scrutinize claims of broad presidential power. This marks a shift toward rebalancing authority between the branches. The decision reinforces the principle that lawmaking and law enforcement must remain separate. The struggle over tariff power dates back to America's founding. For decades, Congress tightly controlled trade, but the 20th century saw more authority delegated to presidents. This partnership worked until recent presidents stretched those powers beyond their intended limits. Supporters of strong executive power argue presidents need flexibility in a fast-moving world. Critics counter that tariffs are taxes, and only Congress should wield that power. The Supreme Court's decision sides with Congress, reaffirming its central role in trade policy. The ruling restores the constitutional balance, ensuring public debate and accountability. America's system of checks and balances is strengthened for the challenges ahead.